So on these first slides for wall photographer, there's questions for each stanza to prompt you, to get you thinking. It's crucial that you do this on your own before you look at my answers, my interpretations. Because as I've said, you need to develop those skills of being able to analyse unseen poetry. And also, just because they're my answers, it doesn't mean that they're correct. Poetry is open-ended. There's different ways to interpret the lines, the language features, the structure, etc. Okay, so make sure you go through these slides and use those questions and analyse and annotate the poem on your own. If there's certain questions that you're not sure, you can't think of what to say, then leave those. It's about making the strongest points you can. Also, these questions aren't limiting, okay? If you notice something else in the poems, then analyse those. Right, okay, so you'll see a slide that says my ideas are on the following slides. So don't look at that until you've already had a go at answering those questions yourself. Right, okay, so first stanza. In his dark room he is finally alone, with spools of suffering set out in ordered rows. The only light is red and softly glows, as though this were a church and he a priest preparing to intone a mass. Right, okay, through these slides, I might not talk through every single point, but some of the ones where if it were me writing it up, I'd think were my stronger points. Some of the themes for this poem, it could be suffering, conflict, war, human apathy, which we'll get onto in a later lesson. Right, okay, so first line. I haven't put the note on here, but in his dark room, I think that dark room maybe could have a double meaning. So in a literal sense, his room would be that it's dark because that's where he produces the pictures. But also on a metaphorical level, it could be in his dark room, as in he himself is in a dark place. Mentally, he's in a dark place after what he's experienced during the where he's been taking photographs of war. This adverb finally, if we say, oh, that lesson was over, finally, it's a sense of relief. You couldn't wait for it to be over. So him returning from this war zone and being in the comfort of his own house, he feels a sense of release. Although now he's maybe feeling isolated. Okay, with spools of suffering set out in ordered rows. So here I've put a picture on of what a spool is. If you do art, you might be more confident, or photography, with this terminology. But think of something being wound round here and being gradually pulled out like string. Notice the enjambment here as well, as if it's like an endless spiral of that string being pulled out and pulled out. So that when he is lining these photographs on the spool here, the fact that that enjambment shows how it's being constantly released from here. I don't know the technical terms for it. But there's just constantly going to be more and more and more pictures added to it, hence the more string that's needed. And notice the sibilants as well. This is something to be careful with. Just because you see sibilants, don't always assume, oh, it sounds like a snake, it's evil sounding. Because that isn't always the case. Sometimes the S sound can be quite soft and pleasant. But in here it does make, I think, create quite an ominous tone. Okay, so in ordered rows, again, that makes me think that it's alluding to gravestones and how they can be in ordered rows, as if these pictures of people, whether they're dead or alive, they're soon to be dead, living in that war zone. And these pictures along here are almost mirror the ordered rows of graves. So it's a very, very bleak, depressing, dark opening. Okay, he also, all this bit, him referring to almost his dark room as if he's in a church, and as if he is the priest. If you think of priests, normally it's their responsibility to provide comfort, like I've put here, to be a moral guide, to instruct others. So maybe he thinks he's serving a higher purpose as a messenger by photographing these war zones, and the impact he wants that to have on his audience, on the readers of these newspapers who are going to see these pictures all over the news. As if he has a purpose in society. So next stanza. He has a job to do. Solutions slop in trays beneath his hands, which did not tremble then, though seem to now. Rural England, home again to ordinary pain which simple weather can dispel, to fields which don't explode beneath the feet of running children in a nightmare heat. Okay, I think there's a lot you can say about this stanza. This first line, this short declarative sentence, he has a job to do. Okay, it seems very businesslike. It seems devoid of emotion, which means it doesn't show much emotion. Considering he'll have photographed really brutal things, maybe people in their final moments, people dying, just saying he has a job to do. It maybe seems quite harsh. So in one way you could see that he's not sympathetic, or maybe it's the fact that his emotions are that much, he's needing to detach himself from that and remember that he's there and he's got a job to do. Okay, solutions slop in trays beneath his hands. So the solutions, again, this would be like a really clever point, but I think again has a double meaning. In one sense, the solutions that are in the trays could be about the photographs that are producing. I don't really know how it works, but when you put it in that fluid before you then put it up on the strings. So yeah, that's the solutions that are in trays, these photographs. So if I can just try and make this bigger so you can see. Where metaphorically, the solutions could suggest the idea of solving political problems which cause war. Perhaps he thinks that the photos he's taken can help that solution. So yeah, double meaning. In one sense, he could just be talking about the pictures. In the other sense, he could be talking about these pictures might hold the solution to ending war or to raising awareness. The fact that it uses the verb slop though, solution slop, suggests that it's quite careless. So even if they have the power to change things, to end war, to make life easier for people, the fact that it's just slopped maybe suggests that he knows that actually these pictures won't achieve anything ultimately. Okay, and notice that his hands, when he was there and he was taking the pictures, his hands weren't trembling. Okay, when you'd expect them to tremble more at that point. Maybe it's just because he was focused, and as he said, he had a job to do. When now actually that he's back in his dark room, he's back home, now his hands are trembling, which seems quite ironic. Rural England, if you don't know what this means, it'd be easier to search a photo, so go on to Google. But think of rolling hills, of the countryside, of green. So why has he included that? Okay, he is home in rural England. Think about how he's juxtaposing that, I've put over here, how he's juxtaposing that to the horrors of war. Okay, so he has just experienced both. And now he's comparing both, or contrasting rather. So he says that people at home have ordinary pain. So notice the adjectives ordinary and simple that illustrate the comfort, existence of those at his home who aren't suffering war, who aren't in conflict zones. And their pain is that mundane, that insignificant, that trivial, all meaning not important, that simple weather can dispel. Okay, if you're from England or if you've been to England, you'll know that the weather is always pretty terrible. So in an English person, if the sun come out, all their problems would go away and they'd be happy. Okay, but think about that in contrast to the people who will be losing their loved ones, losing their own lives, potentially seeing their children killed in front of them. And our pain is that insignificant that the weather could make us feel better. Okay, why is he using these very, very sharp and harsh contrasts. To fields, so again we've got this image of fields which don't explode beneath the feet. Okay, so he's talking about bombs, explosions, of running children in a nightmare heat. Okay, there's a famous wartime picture of children that are running during the war. You should be able to find it on one of the slides. I'll put the link to it. So here Carol Ann Duffy is alluding to that picture that most people would know about and would have seen. Where here you've got running children. If you to think of that in fields in rural England, it seems, I don't know, like freedom, out there playing in fields, carefree. Where actually in this war zone, they're running to try and escape a bomb or being killed or being shot. So again, it's very graphic, but then that's compared to the pleasantry of rural England. Okay, stanza 3. Something is happening. A stranger's features faintly start to twist before his eyes, a half-formed ghost. He remembers the cries of this wife's man, how he sought approval without words, to do what must, and how the blood stained into foreign dust. Okay, so this bit, I would say, there is a volta, meaning a turning point. Something is happening, something's changed. Where before you could maybe argue that he's being quite detached, now the memories are coming flooding back to him. I think he becomes more emotional. So something is happening. This could be about the pictures are starting to develop and actually showing the people who he's photographed, or that something is happening to him. Like I've said here, it becomes less detached and more emotive. A stranger's features faintly start to twist before his eyes. Again, this verb twist sounds painful. Also, he's a stranger. Again, is this him trying as much as he can to try and detach himself, and remind himself that they're only strangers to him. Yet he has bared witness to their most intimate pain and grief. Although he has to distance himself, it's easier said than done. The modal must indicates the necessity of his work. One of the main quote I guess I would talk about if I was writing about this poem would be a half-formed ghost. Why does he refer to the stranger as a half-formed ghost? So I think in one sense, it reflects the lifelessness of the victims, and I guess foreshadows their impending death. They're already almost a ghost. They're just like the Walking Dead, because their life's going to be taken any moment. Alternatively, it could be an allusion to a ghost, how the photographer feels that he is going to be haunted by the memory of this stranger. If you think of ghosts, we worry about them coming and haunting us. He remembers the cries of this man's wife, how he sought approval without words to do what someone must. With this part, how he sought approval without words to do what someone must. The only thing I can think he's relating to is he's powerless in this situation. I know a lot of times students say, well, why would you do something? What good is it just taking a photo? Like, actually, actions would be more powerful. But he seems to be looking at this wife and asking approval to take this picture, as if to ask her to understand why he's there and why he's doing that. And how the blood stained into foreign dust. Okay, so as if it doesn't tell you where, which gives it a universal quality. It doesn't tell us where this war zone is, but it's now been stained. Okay, as if it's been tainted and corrupted by the bloodshed of innocent victims, and that's never going to be taken away. If something's stained, normally it's permanent, as if that war zone is never going to recover from it.